one thing I have learned over the years as I grew up is how special farewells are. When someone is departing us, when someone is going away from us, we love that moment. No, we don't love it because the person is bad, because sometimes it can be tears. But it's a moment that all of us remember. When someone is going away, the person we love most, especially we know that the person is going to spend a long time away. What we do is, whether at the airport, or the train station, or at home, wherever we are seeing the person in the final time, what we tend to do is we share special moments together. We will hug the person, we will kiss them, and we will share some wonderful and amazing messages together. And sometimes what we tend to do is those messages are so important and dear to us. So sometimes we can keep them somewhere that we cannot remember, or somewhere in our hearts we hold those messages so dear and we keep them. When this person was leaving me after spending so many times together, this is what the person said to me. But not all farewells are enjoyable, especially if we say farewell to a person who is dying, because the person is departing from this earth or in this life forever. And for many of us, sometimes we don't get opportunity to say farewell to them. We don't get opportunity to hear the person's last words. Because if we do, we will hold them dearly. So sometimes back home, as we cry or mourn the person, we will be saying that, why didn't you tell me that you are leaving? I wish I was there so that I could hear what you have, or the message that you have for me. Because those messages are so important. Not all of us have that privilege of standing by the bed when our loved one is finally going to be with the Lord. But as you read through the Old Testament, you come across many passages that people had that privilege, that opportunity to say farewell to their dads or their loved ones. One of them I remember vividly almost is when Jacob was about to die. I think it's Genesis chapter 50. He called all his 12 sons and their children, and beside them he said to them what each of them were going to be. And lo and behold, as you read through the Bible, you see that everything he said about them came to pass. That's how amazing and how wonderful that those who is departing from the west are so powerful. I remember David when he was about to die, also did the same. Because Solomon, and he taught him or advised him about how to rule Israel. Even those who are enemies who he should put to death. That's just one thing that, especially in the case of Joab, to put him to death. It's genuine. What I'm trying to say is those words, we cherish them. They are important because they are advice from someone we know is departed. But what many of us do not sometimes realize is that when Jesus was about to die, he left us those words. Jesus spent time with his disciples in his final moment and gave them those words. And sometimes we do not realize that. I know about the sayings on the cross, the 7 sayings on the cross. And many of us have preached about it. But that is when he was on the cross, when he was dying on the cross. No, I'm talking about the moment he spent with them. Because Jesus was not on a sick bed. He was going to be put to death. And he left them some words that's so special. And we can find them in the upper room. Okay? So this morning we were reading about the Lord's Supper. So in the upper room, when they went there, that was Jesus' final moment. Because after that, he was arrested, and he was put to death. So the upper room could have been probably Thursday evening, or depending on which of the Gospels you read, maybe early Friday morning. And as you look at it carefully, what you see is that the three other Gospels, the synoptic Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they have a lot of in common. That's what we call the synoptics. So what they do is they concentrate on the Lord's Supper. So all of them record the Lord's Supper and the events leading to it. If you read, he says two of them go and this and that will happen. You meet a person and he'll show you the room and they will say, they record those things for us and what Jesus said and everything going down. But I really like John. John doesn't want to do what everyone else has done. He doesn't want to copy anybody. So he does his original work. And not that he's in competition with everybody. No. Because he looked at their gospels, he wrote last, but he looks at their gospel and he says that, okay, I was there. So I'm going to give you another perspective, a different perspective, different things that is missing from here. So in a way, he is complimenting them. So when they spend small time talking about Jesus, the Lord's Supper, what he does is Jesus' last moment is so dear to John. It's so important to him. So out of his 21 chapters, he devotes 5 of them to the upper room. That's from chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. All of them happened in the upper room. That is Jesus' last moment. What John seems to be telling us is Jesus is about to go. We have spent a lot of time with him. But this time that we spent in the upper room was so dear and so important to him and to us and to the church. So I'm going to give you everything that he said. But what I'm seeing is sometimes, I don't know whether we realize those times of those moments. And if we attach that importance to what Jesus did. So in chapter 13, just after he washes their feet, then Jesus goes on to talk to them about many of the things that were going to happen. Okay, so where do we take it from? We take it from verse 31, because it's a long conversation, and I'm sorry we're not going to be able to tell everything. But there's a lot of exchanges between Jesus and the disciples that I want to draw your attention to. And verse 31, he says, when he had gone out, Jesus said, now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified. For God is glorified in him, God will also glorify himself and glorify him immediately. Little children, did Jesus say, I shall be with you a little while longer. I'm going to be with you for a very, very short time. That's what it means. Sometimes in the children's English can be a bit confusing. You will see me a little while, and as I said to the Jews, where I'm going, you cannot come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I gave you, that you love one another as I love you, that you also love one another. So Jesus says, I'm going away. Where I am going, you cannot come. So Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered, please come back. Where I'm going, you cannot follow me now. afterward, later on you can follow. Peter said, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for your sake. And that's where Jesus, I'm summarizing, told Peter that you're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows. So Brother Francis, keep going. Okay. And then he starts again in chapter 14. It's one conversation. He says, no, don't worry. Don't let your heart be troubled. You believe in me. Believe also in you believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If they were not so, I would not have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Brother Francis, keep going. So Jesus is telling them, don't worry. Okay, verse 5. And Peter, Thomas says, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? So Jesus' famous passage or saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life, is a response to Thomas' question. That how can we know where you are going? Where are you going? And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Then Philip joins the conversation here. And he said, Lord, show us the Father. Because Jesus says, I'm going to the Father. And Philip enters the conversation. So 3 of them. We have found Peter, Thomas, all of them asking the question. And Philip answered the question. And he says, Lord, show us the Father. It is sufficient for us. That is enough for us. Just tell us the Father. And Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long? And yet you have not known me. Philip, who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show us the Father? Please stop there. Because I'm interested in Philip's question and Jesus answering. He says, show us the Father. And Jesus said, me showing you the Father? Philip, don't you know me? I have been with you for such a long time, and you are still asking me to show you the Father. What does it mean? Right. This is Philip, one of the disciples, all of the disciples. They have walked with Jesus for a good 3.5 years. Moving up and down the country of Israel, sometimes even just outside it, doing amazing and wonderful things. They have sat down eating together. They have prayed together. They have been to parties together. They have been to funerals together. They have witnessed everything Jesus did, all the miracles that Jesus did, raising people from the dead, healing the crippled, the blind, and everyone. They have seen everything in Jesus for good 3 years. But he still comes to him and says to him, show us the Father. And Jesus says to him, Philip, don't you know me? I have been with you for such a long time, and you're still asking me to show you the Father. Don't you know that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? Everything I do not do it on my own. I do it through the Father. That is what Jesus said. So if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Everything I do not do it on my own. Still, you ask me to show you the Father. The disciples have spent so much time with Jesus. But up till this time, even as he goes on the cross, they don't get it. Peter doesn't get it. Thomas doesn't get it. They are still somehow thinking that something is going to happen with the Romans or whatever. That is their thinking. They are thinking about themselves. They are thinking about power. They are thinking about authority. That is what they are thinking. Church, it is possible to be sitting here today and still not knowing Jesus. That's harsh, isn't it? It is possible to have spent all your life coming to church and still not knowing Jesus. It is possible to be the leader of the church and still not having a relationship with Jesus. It is possible to be the most amazing worship leader and still don't have a relationship with Jesus. It is possible to be the best preacher in the world, spend so many years preaching, amazing, and people are claiming you, but still not knowing Jesus and not having a relationship with you. Just like Philip. Once I sat in a meeting in my home city in Kumasi, listening to one of the most amazing and wonderful Christian leaders. His name is Reverend Yabwa. And Reverend Yabwa was in the 60s and 70s, was one of the pioneers of the Pentecostal movement in Ghana. His church is in Kumasi, Evangelical Calvarian Church. And as a young man, we were in a youth group and we sat down and we were listening to him. And he said something that shocked me. And it left me thinking. He said, I have been preaching in the streets of London, preaching in the streets of New York, preaching in the streets of Berlin, in the streets of Sydney, all the Western world. But I have not encountered Jesus. And in that moment, I sat down and I was thinking, what is he talking about? What was he preaching there? Because church, the thing is different knowing about someone and knowing somebody and having a relationship with that person. They are two different things. There are people that we can read about their biographies, but when we sit down with them, we don't really know them. And that's what many of us do. We know about Jesus. But the question is, that knowledge, does it lead to a relationship with him? A conviction with him? Or we are just deceiving ourselves, playing acts, and showing everybody who we are, thinking it's about us. My uncle used to say, it's not showmanship. Christianity is not showmanship. It's about knowing Jesus, understanding him, and having a relationship with him. Some of us, we pride ourselves in the things that we possess, things that we do, things that people see us doing. Where we come from, the church we belong to, all of them come from nothing. There was a preacher in Ghana. He was an evangelist Morgan. If you've ever lived in Ghana, probably you know him, around the late 80s and 90s. He would go into the marketplace and he would set up his speakers and everything, and then he would be preaching to the people. And one of his great lines was this: when you ask people, why do you go to church? He says, many a time what you hear is this: I go to Catholic church. I go to the Church of Pentecost. And you ask them, oh, which Catholic church? He said, oh, the big one, the cathedral. That's where I was born. Church, all that counts for nothing if you do not have a relationship with Jesus. If the knowledge of him does not lead to a relationship that changes life. Because Jesus said, ye shall know them by their fruits. And sometimes you have seen people who have been here or been there for ages. And you ask yourself, what is this lifestyle? How we talk to people, how we accept people, how we relate to each other. Church, it will show your relationship with Jesus must show in the way you interact with others, in the way you go about your daily business as a Christian. That's why Apostle Paul said, nothing, everything counts for nothing. You remember earlier on, we were singing, knowing you, Jesus, knowing you. Do you remember that song? Brother, can you put it on? Knowing you, Jesus. I think the person who composed that song based on Apostle Paul's words in Philippians chapter 3. That's where Paul tells the church in Philippi about who he is. Everything he has accomplished, his background, all that he can boast of. But he got to a time where he says, all of them count for nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's worthless. I'll put everything aside except knowing Jesus. So, Brother Francis has put it on. Let me read it quickly. If you go a little bit further. Okay, let's start from here. Here he says, though I also might have confidence in the flesh. If anyone else thinks he may have confidence in the flesh, I more so. Circumcised, it is like writing his own CV. Or when before you write the CV, you have that in the section we call your profile. So Paul is telling us about his profile. And he's saying that he's not just anyone, he has achieved something. Okay? So he says, circumcised, the envy of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, concerning the law, a Pharisee, concerning the zeal, persecuting the church, concerning the righteousness which is in the law, blameless. But what things were gain to me, these I have counted loss for Christ. So he tells us all about all the achievements, all his background, everything that we boast of and we can boast of. He doesn't know me. I will show him. I have achieved a lot. I hold this. I am that. Paul says, I can say a lot more. And if we glean through his letters in the New Testament, we see a man who had a lot about himself. He was born in Tarsus, as all of us know. So he also held a Roman citizenship. He wasn't just a Hebrew. So he belonged to both worlds. At a young age, he was sent to Jerusalem to sit under the feet of the great Gamaliel. That is the person he studied his rabbinic studies for. That's what many of us say he's a lawyer. Okay, it's not a lawyer as we understand law. He's a lawyer in the terms of what the Old Testament says, the Torah. The Torah means law, teaching. So that is what he accomplished himself in. And he became so zealous in his following of the Lord. That's what he was telling us. A Pharisee. For someone to be able to go to the authorities and take permission from them tells you about that person's standing. But as we read verse 8, he says, yet indeed I knowledge of Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and are counted as rubbish, that I may gain Christ, and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness which is from God, by faith. What? That I may know him. That I may know him. He has counted all these things lost. Why? Because he wants to know who? Jesus. That I may know him, and the power of his resurrection, and the fellowship of his suffering, be conformed to his death. That is what is most important to God. That I may know him. I want to know him. Do you know him? Or everything that is around you, people praising you and glorifying you, that means more important to you than knowing Jesus. This is Paul talking. Not in the near one. He says everything is meaningless. Everything he has mentioned to us, it doesn't count for anything. What is important to him is he wants to know Jesus and have fellowship with him. That is what is important to him. That I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering, be conformed to his death, if by any means I may attain to the resurrection of the dead. Church, run out of time. Now, before we have a question for you. My question is, what is dear to you? What is important to you? I know we live in a world that we want to prove to people who are around us. But that's not the most important thing. Jesus is not saying that positions are bad, reputations are not good. He's not saying that wealth is not good. He's not saying that everything we want to attain is always good. Last week we were talking to the young people about the rich man who came to Jesus and asked him that, how do I get eternal life? And Jesus said, go and follow all the commandments. He said, I have followed them since I was a boy. The Bible says Jesus loved him. And he goes on to say to the man, okay, if you want to, then go and sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Come and follow me. And with that, the man turned and he never came back again. But Jesus said that the man was being bad. No. But he had put his faith, his hope, his confidence, and everything